let's talk about your religious, spiritual, secular journey and how Mormonism has evolved, because Mormonism is different in 2018 than it was in 2011.
Yes.
Right?
So different.
And you mentioned a trip to Oaxaca.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to tie that in. Have we talked about that yet?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
I want to tie that in.
I don't know if is that spiritual? Is that Mormon related?
It's very spiritual.
Let's start. Do you want to start there and then we'll talk about your spiritual Mormon journey?
That'll be part of it, I think. Okay. Yeah. So spirituality,
So at the time we interviewed, do you remember if you believed in God or Jesus or other churches or any of that stuff?
What I had said, I think on Mormon Stories at the time, is I use this analogy just right there on the spot, and I think it works. I had this glass globe in my hand of the world, and I saw the continents and I saw everything, and this is my worldview. And the moment that I left, I dropped it. It shattered, and I bit by bit had to pick up the pieces and ask myself, do I believe in this? Is this real? Is this conditioned? What does my heart say? What does my instinct say? What does science say about this? What does Carl Sagan say about this, right? And so I'm looking at these things, and I think at the time I was in a space where I didn't know if God exists. I think I believed in some sort of intelligent design. I did not believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet. I did not believe that Jesus of Nazareth was really the savior of the world, if he existed at all. So I didn't know. It's not that I had a firm belief other way, yes or no, but at the time I was just really holding on to something's out there cosmically, and I feel like it's pulling me, it's guiding me. Maybe it's just my subconscious kind of yelling at me. Who knows, right? But I was open. I was very open to believing anything. And for a while, I went through that staunch atheist, angry Mormon kind of journey where it's like, screw it all. Like, I don't believe in any of this. There's nothing. It's all about science and this, that, and the other. And now I'm in a space personally where I think I've gotten to be a little bit more like Buddhist in my beliefs, like where I just believe in putting an output of just being kind, helping others, and hoping that karma comes back your way. And if not, deal with it with peace, deal with it with love. I truly feel like there's not one person in this world that should say, I know. I feel like that's just really silly to me. I do believe in science. I'm a huge astrophysics nerd. I usually go to bed watching or listening to podcasts on astrophysics and even like theoretical quantum physics, theoretical physics in general. And I like hearing that stuff. I like hearing the what ifs. That fascinates me more than people telling me the what is of the world, because I don't believe that anybody really knows. And I'm okay with that. That's the one thing that right now that I'm at, like, as much as I don't believe in a God, but if there's other evidence to prove to the contrary, great. And I'd be open-minded. I'm open-minded enough to just say I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to listen, but I don't subscribe to a faith or a movement or this, that, and the other. A lot of my Mormon friends, my good friend Brady, he joined, I think, a Universal Unitarian, kind of Universalist kind of church or movement. He invited me to it one time. I could not do it. I stayed out in the parking lot. I didn't need that kind of community. I have friends. I have family. I don't need that community. I have the dance community. I have other communities. I play basketball. That to me is enough community for me. I don't need to congregate on a Sunday or a Saturday to feel the need to be spiritual. Interestingly enough, I have a lot of friends that tell me you should really try meditation. That's another thing, just to listen to yourself. And I love that. I'm also so high energy and I'm so anxious and so ADD that for me, I would do better walking, running, working out at the gym, putting on good music, going for a drive, and just turning off everything and listening. Even improvisational dancing, I feel like I'm in tune with myself, I'm in tune with the universe, and I find my spirituality is founded in things that I've always had. It's funny, John. I remember competing in dance competitions as a kid, as a teenager, as an early adult, before I left Mormonism, before I lost my testimony, and I felt the spirit when I performed, right? I feel that same spirit now. I feel that same energy now. I feel it stronger now.
What if someone says you can't because you left the church?
Well, then they can go suck it. I don't care. Yeah, because I left the church. But you know, it's
So
ironic.
what is it? Is it the spirit or is it something else?
I just feel like it's probably a wonderful boost of endorphins that our brain is sending. You know, I believe it's probably a lot of just positive something or other. It's that feeling. We get that when we watch something beautiful. We watch that when we get the chills. We get those feelings all the damn time. We get that when we're in love with people. I've gotten that when I've fallen for men, right? That same feeling that I did when I testified of Joseph Smith, when I was preaching to the beautiful people in Oaxaca. I felt that same feeling. When I was in the temple, when I was having sex with somebody, I felt that same feeling. It's that 8-ball beautiful feeling that you feel. We've all felt it. We're all humans. It's endorphins. You know, it's adrenaline.
What's making you feel emotional right now?
It's dopamine. The fact of that, it's even just saying it out loud, the fact that you're asking me this, it's that realization that it's always been the same feeling. And it's a manipulative tactic. You feel that right now? That's because God's saying that it's true.
And the church is true.
And the church is true. And Joseph Smith was a prophet, et cetera, et cetera. It's all connected to this chain reaction. No, you were probably singing just a beautiful hymn. No, that story about that sick woman that you helped in sacrament meeting, that touched me, right? It's not saying that Joseph was a prophet. That's silly. That's truly silly to me. God, you know, watching the, you know, que hermoso, how is it in Spanish or in English? Sorry, I still think more in Spanish when it comes to church stuff. But, you know, even watching the First Vision videos, right? They're beautifully done. They're amazing. Of course you're going to feel good about it, right? I felt the same way when I watched Schindler's List. You know, like you feel the same beautiful feeling and it's a completely different context. So for me, that feeling, that spirit has never left. If anything, I feel that same beautiful, sweet spirit. So someone could say, to play John's devil advocate, right? Well, maybe you never had the spirit to begin with and you were always an apostate and that's the devil. Fine. If you really want to go and stretch that much, and sleep at night feeling a little better about yourself, go for it.
I mean, yeah. Does the name Araceli Rubalcaba mean anything?
Araceli Rubalcaba, y sí, ¿cómo estás, hermana? ¿Qué dice? Oh, me da mucho gusto platicar contigo. No,
so she writes, I am a witness that Benji was a really good missionary in Oaxaca. He went above and beyond. He was not an average missionary. I also believe in being good, kind, and fight for happiness in this life. Whatever your happiness is. Someday we'll know the truth, maybe. Let's just be good and be happy. But you were a good missionary. You were a faithful, believing Mormon.
Yeah.
We've got testimony here live, and you were feeling the same thing that Mormons feel because you were devout at the time.
I was, yeah.
And you're saying that you still feel those things.
I still feel those things.
Yeah.
You know, Araceli, I love you. I love your family so much. Say hi to Izzy and your parents and everyone. Just hi.
How do you?
So they were a family in one of my wards that I served in. Her dad was the stake president.
Is it weird to have her watching now?
No, it's not. Like, in fact, like we message each other on like social media and whatnot. I'm still really close with a lot of the families in Oaxaca that I met. And I think that can kind of segue into something, and I think she's going to appreciate this story. She's moved. She doesn't live in Oaxaca anymore. I think you guys live in Utah now. But either way, El Bosque, that was the ward. El Bosque and El Iscotel. I served in 2 wards at the same time. We call it El Bosque Tech. But what happened, I decided a couple of years ago, I went through a really like emotional journey in a competition 2 years ago where I did a piece about that love that I had mentioned earlier that was loveless, that relationship that I was in. And I spent almost, 6 months, 6 months just trying to get to a place where I could be emotional and strong enough to perform this piece. And it was talking about not being loved. And so I was so emotionally tired that, and drained from the experience that after I competed, my brain and my body were just done. My emotions were done. It was so raw. It was so truthful and real that I just was so tired. And I'm like, I need to go on a vacation. And I had about a week for myself to lock it up and to go on vacation and to go somewhere. So I had this feeling that I really wanted to go visit the areas of my mission. and I decided to book a last-minute ticket to Oaxaca, Mexico. For those of you that didn't listen to the first Mormon Stories video, I was in a space emotionally where to this day, like Oaxaca and the experience was so beautiful and the people there were so amazing. And to be a missionary there was truly one of the greatest experiences of my life, even to this day. I don't regret 1 minute. I don't regret 1 second, one interaction, one lesson given, one baptism, one anything, because it was truly a beautiful experience amongst the most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life. And I don't know if many people can say that, being an ex-Mormon. A lot of people run away from the communication of the people that they spoke to. I knew from interacting with some people, I got a couple of nasty letters in Spanish because it took a couple of years after the Mormon Stories posting for people to translate, I guess, like the transcripts of my interview in Spanish. And there was another stake president from a different ward and stake that sent a letter out actually to all the families of the stake saying, if Benji Schwimmer, if Elder Schwimmer comes and visits you, to run away from him because he's an apostate and he'll preach against the church and he'll make you leave the church. And he's a dangerous man spiritually. And so I got a message. I got a message from a friend of mine who was Mormon in Oaxaca, and he sent me this letter saying, I just wanted to forward this to you, man. I don't know if you're planning on coming, but just be careful. You might be rejected, and I don't want your heart broken because I know how much you love the Oaxacan people. And I decided to go anyways. So I went there. John, it was the funniest thing. I had a full beard. Like I was training. I looked like Rocky Balboa in like Rocky IV when he's like Ivan Drago, like just hearts on fire lifting rocks in Siberia. And I didn't look anything like my squeaky clean Mormon missionary self, right? And I went down there and I was shaking. I was trembling the entire time and I was listening. And I brought pictures on my iPod and iPhone rather. And as soon as I land, like it was immediate nostalgia. And ironically, I landed on a Sunday, right? So I'm walking around and I'm like, this is crazy to be here. This is so weird. And Oaxaca is separated in 7 regions, a lot of different indigenous tribes, but I was in the main city at the time. And I'm like, I'm going to go visit the temple. Like it's Sunday, there's a chapel next to it. I've never been back to church. I know somebody asked that in the questions if I've ever returned to the church. I never have. But I'm like, maybe I'll go visit a Oaxacan ward just to see what it feels like to see the missionaries. I was waxing really poetic at the time. And so I walked in there and I'm like, okay, I had like t-shirt and jeans on. I had tattoos all over my arms. And I'm thinking, gosh, I feel really weird going in. So I broke the Sabbath and I went to a chedraui, which is like a supermarket, Walmart kind of hybrid. And I bought like a white dress shirt, pants and a tie. I went full Mormon missionary. I still had a beard. And ironically, I didn't know this, but I think Russell M. Nelson was actually speaking via satellite at the time. So nobody was at the church building. It was completely empty. So I walked in this church room by myself and explored all around temple. And I took pictures. And out of nowhere, I started realizing like, I can't do this. Like, I don't want to see the families that I loved because I don't want to break their hearts. You know, if they knew that I left the church, that's fine. But not a lot of them reached out to me. So I figured maybe they had their peace with me and I didn't want to be a heretic. I didn't want to be an apostate. I didn't want to shake their foundations of faith that they believed in. That's not my place. That's not my intention. And so I thought I bought a telephoto lens and I was just going to spy on them. Like, I was going to like be fully incognito and just like visit their houses and like just see them. I rented a car. Maybe I'll just drive with like face down, baseball cap on. And as I'm getting into my car, leaving the temple, I hear, and this is the weirdest story, guys. It's beautiful. I hear, Elder Schwimmer, Elder Schwimmer. Schwimmer. They called me Schwimmer with a CH. And out of nowhere, I look to my left and there's this beautiful man just running towards me. Tears in his eyes. He was a block and a half away from me. He was coming out of the Stake Center building, running towards me. He recognized me from, yards away.
And years? How many years?
12.
Yeah.
No, more. Oh my gosh, 2003, 2004, 2005. April 27th, 2005 is when I came home from my mission.
And this was what year?
This is 2 years ago.
So 2016, so yeah. 11 years later?
11 years later.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there like, And he's like, runs up to me, and this guy gives me a hug, and I look, and it's Miguel. And I baptized him. And he lived in like a village 12 hours away in a bus ride. And I looked at him like, what are you doing here? And he just gives me this hug. He's like, I knew it was you. He's like, I could just tell by like the way you were standing, it was you. And I'm like, this guy just ran up to me and gave me a hug. And I looked at him and I'm like, hey, and he looked at my arm and he saw the tattoos. And you could see like his brow kind of change. And I was immediately expecting to just be like, I wasn't going to backpedal, but I just immediately knew I was going to be probably rejected. And he looked at me and he looked at my tattoos. He looked at me, he looked at the beard, and he jumps up and he gives me another hug. And he's like, brother, I know what happened. He's like, we translated your Mormon Stories video. And he's like, everybody wants you to come back. And I'm like, but what about the letter? He's like, we've all got the letter and nobody cares. He's like, we want Elder Schwimmer to come visit. Damn it, I'm going to cry.
That's
Shoot, right. John, damn you. It was so incredibly beautiful to be an openly gay man, to be an openly non-believing member, ex-Mormon, to visit his village. Tattoo wielding, beard yielding. Yeah. So I actually ended up shaving the second day I got there just because it was so damn hot and I was getting hives from it, which made me even look that much more Mormon, which was hysterical. And I got there, and other than that one stake president who wrote said letter, I drove 12 hours. And by the way, Miguel was getting married, and so he was staying there for the week. He was going to have he was getting married out there in Oaxaca City. He was getting sealed in the temple. And it was just so wonderful to connect with him. But I remember he was just a wonderful guy, and he was so sweet. Like, talk about a serendipitous moment. Those are those moments where it's like, I can't say I'm a staunch atheist, because what are the odds of that? I'm going to spy on these people. They're not going to see me. Elder Schwimmer comes to the village. Come see everybody. And John, you know what was beautiful is this. To the viewers, I went and I went with all these people, and at one point I got a little hotel room in the same place that I stayed when my parents came to pick me up in Oaxaca. It was wonderful. And I walked around the streets by myself. It was weird to walk in Oaxaca alone because you're always used to the companion. And at one point, somebody from every ward that I was at accompanied me. Like, kind of just took me around the house as if somebody moved. They showed me where they were at. And I remembered everybody by name. They remembered me. We would hug, we would cry, we would share stories. I talked about my partner, my life partner at the time. I talked about being in a relationship, and they just kind of sat there and they all just smiled and they said, well, we're happy if you're happy. And it was never a passive aggressive, like sweet spirit, oh, bless your heart kind of comment. It was truthful. And I sat there and the missionaries, I went on splits with the missionaries to show all my less active people that I'd baptized that weren't going. Like, it was the weirdest thing, John. It was so freaking beautiful. And it was like, here, visit these people because the missionaries can help you. And what I learned was this, and this is why I can still keep my mission and be happy with everything about my mission that I did. Whether I believe in the church or not, I don't, but whether I believe or somebody else believes, it's one thing. But what I learned is some people need church. Some people need that community, and it betters their lives, especially in a place, in certain areas as impoverished as Oaxaca is. In some places it's, we ate bugs, like we ate Hakuna Matata, like instead of taco meat, we had tortillas and crickets. And, so to see these people active and social and finding a sense of community, it was wonderful. Because I think I went there almost anti-religion, almost anti-church, almost anti-everything. And to see these beautiful people, it made me realize that there's a place and a space for everyone. As long as they're not hurting others, it's okay. And I left with a huge, profound sense of peace, gratitude, validation for the 2 years that I gave up of my real life to do this, and I wouldn't take it back. I would never give back my 2 years. I was meant to be there. I was grateful that I was there, and I was so grateful to have returned. On a funny side note, for those of you that are ex-Mormon, so Rubalcaba family, please cover your ears in this moment. I made a list I made a list of all the things that I couldn't do in the white handbook. And I wanted to break every single thing because I was a good missionary, and I broke it. I had coffee every morning. I tried tequila when I was there. I went swimming in the beach. I went to a nude beach. It was amazing. What else did I do? I hugged all the members. I hugged women. It was great. I kissed somebody on the mouth. It was just amazing. It was so nice to break that weird block that I still was feeling, and it was wonderful to explore that. I actually posted a picture years ago of me standing in the nude beach in Zipolite, which is in one of the areas that I served in my mission, and I remember we couldn't be in Zipolite because it was filled with gays and drug addicts. Well, one of those things was true for sure, but it was great. So yeah, Oaxaca was a wonderful experience, both the first time I went and the most recent time I went. And I'm coming back in December, and hopefully I'll get to bring a significant other with me, which will be, I think, the next step in getting to know people and who I am now as a person. But it was a wonderful experience. It was life-changing.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah.
So many men and women who leave the LDS Church and had served missions, one of the areas that sometimes they experience with regret is like, I can't believe I brought other people into the church.
Yeah.
I want to go, and sometimes they'll have the impulse to want to go back and deconvert them all. Or
no, I didn't.
And what you're saying is that you don't regret bringing those people into the church.
No.
And you feel like for them, for many of them, it's still a good thing.
Yeah. Like my friend Kike, he was my elders quorum president in one of my wards. He and his wife saw the Mormon Stories video, and they left. They left the church, and so I'm more of the belief. It's like, yeah, I would probably rather want people outside of the church if they can find a safe space to live in and be happy and fulfilled, but ultimately, I respect people's choices as much as I hope they respect my choices. And what I loved is that, like, when I went there, about half the people that I knew, some of them stayed, some of them are active, some of them are inactive, some of them are believing, some of them are non-believing. Because like you said, John, the church has changed over the last 7 years. And there's a lot of gay rights issues that are starting to pop up in Mexico in particular, where there's a huge concentration of LDS people. And so yeah, Kike and Marty in particular, like I sat down and I actually had coffee with them. It was great. We had breakfast together and we had coffee. Another member, like we did shots of tequila together. And I don't even really drink very often at all, but it was really cool and she was my mommy, meaning she would cook our food in one of our areas. And she left the church. She was dismayed by it. And she left it on her own recognizance, had nothing to do with me. So I embrace anybody. Like, these people I love, and my love is unconditional. Truly. And I know that these people's love towards me is the same. There is no condition. We connected as people. I am cut my veins. Like I say this in Spanish, córtame mis venas y sale mole en vez de sangre. Like, you cut my veins and like Oaxacan mole comes out instead of blood. And I love these people, and they know that I love them, and I feel their love in return. And I feel like you can't break that because I made a choice to leave. That doesn't change. And it only changed for maybe one or two people. And some of those people left. I don't know if it was because of me or not. Maybe the Mormon Stories bug was planted in some of them. And if they see if I can leave, that maybe they should too. If they do, fine. If they don't, fine. I love them either way. And it's the same thing with just my friends and family that are active or not. Like, I'm okay with either or. It doesn't bother me either way. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the church and its policies with LGBT people. So, so there was Prop 8,
yeah,
which, and you were, where were you in your phase during Prop 8?
Well, Prop 22, I was knocking doors.
So you're in California.
Yes, yeah.
In what grade about?
Prop 22, I was right before mission. I was pre-mission.
So pre-mission. Pre-Prop 8, pre-mission, the church is trying to influence same-sex marriage in California. You're doing what?
We were knocking on doors and trying to get people to be part of the movement.
As a closeted...
Yeah, as a hugely conflicted individual. It's funny, when I was 18, though, I was so pilas. I was so focused on being a missionary. Like, the whole gay thing wasn't even a factor at all, actually. On a side note too, though, one thing that was interesting is when I got back from my mission and Prop 8 started happening, I was actually co-starring in an independent film at the time, and we were shopping it around at all the festivals, and I played a gay man in the movie. It was called Leading Ladies. I think it's on Netflix. Don't watch it, it's bad. But yeah, I co-starred in that film as a gay man, and it was always the question that they would ask at the end. Like, you being a Mormon, we see on your IMDb page that you're a Mormon missionary and this, that, and the other. How can you find a balance playing a gay man, and do you support same-sex marriage? And I was caught off guard, because the funny thing with me is inside I was saying, personally, I don't want same-sex marriage to happen because it's going to make it that much more tempting to leave. You mean I can have everything that you guys have other than a temple marriage? That's tempting. Like, I didn't want it for me because of that, so I understood it. But on the flip side, every gay person that left the church and I saw them get married, I was so happy for them. Like, I didn't judge anybody that left the church. I thought it was actually a great thing, because I believed in the atonement for them, but not for myself, apparently. And I was horribly conflicted with Prop 8. And I remember my bishop, who knew that I was a struggling, same-sex attraction person, who was a big ol' homo, he asked me to donate a sizable amount of money. And he's like, I'm going to challenge you to write a check right now in front of me to donate to the cause. He's like, I think you need to do that. I'm feeling prompted that you need to do that. And so I remember I always keep a check just in case I have to do something for tithing, like a blank check in my scriptures. So I opened it up and I started writing, and I looked at him and I folded I don't think we talked about this in the first interview, did we? And I remember folding the check. I said, I can't do this. I don't feel right doing this. My hands were trembling. And he's like, you need to pray about it. And it just didn't feel right. And I wish I could have been at the time. I wish I was already out. I wish I could have been more vocal. You know what I mean? Had Prop 8 started to happen at the time when I did the Mormon Stories podcast, like, I would have, like, let's make a charge here and talk about it. But I did it, and I regret that. But I just wasn't emotionally, spiritually, or physically, mentally ready to do that at the time. As much as I wanted to be a cause for this and a cause for that, I needed to just wait till it was right for me.
Yeah. And so then it seemed like approaching 2012, and you did your interview in 2011.
Yeah.
That the church, it seemed to me like the church was kind of backing off the issue.
It did.
And by 2011, Mitt Romney's going to run for president against Obama.
Yeah.
And it seemed like the church didn't want any PR fiascos.
Yeah.
And so, there was this time where it's like, oh, maybe the church is going to kind of like, it learned its lesson with Prop 8.
Yeah.
It realized that it backfired. It realized that it's a problem. It's, it caused a lot of people to leave the church.
Yeah.
And it made the church look mean and vicious. And so we had this sort of little few years where we're thinking, wow, maybe we're going to kind of go back and just kind of let this die. Right.
Yeah.
And then the Supreme Court kind of stuff happened. So talk about what that was like to have same-sex marriage legalized across the country for you. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
And have it start in Utah.
Yeah, I know, right? Of all places, right? Yeah. I remember in particular the pictures of like J. Seth Anderson getting married, right, to Michael Ferguson. And those were great, just to see those images of people on that first day getting married. It was wonderful. I was elated because at that point, for me, it was just like, this is something that we can do. This is real. Like, we're valid. It's that seal of approval that we've been accepted. The diagnostic manual does not say that we're crazy or mentally ill anymore. This is wonderful. We can celebrate that. For me though, it was funny because at the time, when I first left, when I did the whole Mormon Stories thing, I wanted babies, I wanted kids, I wanted a family, I wanted this, that, and the other. I wanted the white picket fence with just a guy with my arm over him, right? That's the only difference. And then my thoughts and my beliefs and who I was dating really affected whether I wanted kids or a family or this, that, and the other. And I've actually kind of returned back to, I want kids, I want a family, I want a fun life with a partner. For me, when it was taken away again, I thought that, it was just seeing like the masks were taken off. Like, you can kind of see what's really fueling this movement in this situation. And it was a really sad time for me. The thing with me, though, is I was always more concerned with just my interpersonal relationships with a partner, as more so than what a state can recognize as marriage or not. Like, to me, I want it. We deserve it. We should have it. I'll fight for it. But no one can tell me if I can or cannot be with somebody ultimately, right? So like, no matter what happens with the Supreme Court, whatever, when it happened, I didn't feel like anything was truly taken away from me, because my love is my love, and I'm gonna have it no matter what. But that's just my personal belief. But I understand what it represents, and I understand the larger picture of it all. Like, thinking a little bit more meta, it's different. It's different, obviously. But personally, for me, it didn't shatter my heart. I was enraged, but I didn't feel heartbroken about it. More so anything when the policy changed more recently, the policy, when that changed, that broke me.
Okay, so we get same-sex marriage across the country earlier in 2015, if I remember correctly.
I think so, yeah.
And then November 2015 happens. Talk about that.
When the policy changed, when that was presented, I felt like that was the church doubling down. Right. That was really basically what they said to me. Now, you've talked about this at length. What do I know? Right. I count to 8 for a living. But from my perspective, and having seen the behind the scenes with the church, the church has extended offers to rebaptize me privately. They've wanted me to do this. You haven't told us about your resignation yet. So. Oh, we haven't even gotten there. Okay, so that's.
No, but just like, so did you resign at some point?
I did.
Okay.
I've been trying to resign since Mormon Stories.
Oh,
and they've not.
What do you mean? So talk about that.
This actually kind of connects with the story. So I had when we did Mormon Stories, I had already sent in my letter of resignation. 2011. So yeah, April 27th, 2011, I mailed it in. And when I did, I expected to get something in return. I never did. The church withheld my resignation for years. And every month, I would send in another letter. I would send it to a bishop, a stake president, and directly to Salt Lake. The same damn copy.
And you wanted to resign, why?
Because, and it wasn't a matter of believing. I wanted to resign before I made the choice to break the law of chastity, to break these things. Despite the fact I didn't really believe it, I made covenants. I made promises. And as a matter of principle, I wanted to start with a clean slate. I didn't want to have coffee knowing that I was still a member of the church. I didn't want my life, I didn't want me seeking love to feel like an act of rebellion. And I felt like still being a member symbolized that a little bit. And for most people, they're like, I don't care, like whatever. But I also didn't want my number, my name, as to be part of the masses when they say how many people are a member of this huge conglomerate of people. It's not true. As you've done in other podcasts, like there's so many lying, so much inflation of numbers and membership. They're not as powerful of an entity as they project and present. And I'm not a part of that rough stone rolling. Sorry, I'm not. And you can't count my name as a part of that. You can give me this asterisk. I'm going to put it on my neck and represent myself and say, I can love whoever I want. I will have kids. I can work with kids. I do every day, right?
So to remind our listeners who didn't hear it, you did an asterisk?
Yeah, because of the asterisk program that they put on my church membership records, I actually got a tattoo of the asterisk here on the back of my neck.
Okay.
And it's basically to say that I'm going to live my life. I'm going to mark my body up. You think you can mark my records up? I'm going to change my temple, and I'm going to love. I'm going to have as much butt sex as I want, and I'm going to love who I want. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to work with kids every day, and you can't take that away from me. So, yeah, long story short, when the policy change happened,
So you kept trying to resign.
And I gave up on it ultimately. I thought maybe this is just a lost cause. Maybe they already removed my records, but I still kept getting calls from bishops and missionaries and this, that, and the other. Every time I had an address change, they knew somehow. So the Gestapo of Mormonism was still kind of stalking me. And so for me, what I decided to do is after people started going and marching in Salt Lake, after the policy change, and when I found out some of the kids that I'd worked with through Affirmation and Circling the Wagons, when I found out that a lot of these kids had started to take their lives because of the situation, I felt like I needed to act. And so a couple of buddies of mine, we organized a big group of people to meet in Salt Lake, and we didn't leave until they offered our resignation letters.
So what year is this about?
This is 2015. End of 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
so. Like December, like after the November policy.
it was after the November policy.
Okay.
Oh, it's 2016. I'm sorry.
That's what I thought,
yeah,
yeah.
it was 2016. It was winter, so it must have been like January, February, something like that.
And you're all. This is how many people?
I think at the time there was a big group, about 75 people, but there were like
gay men or just friends?
People.
Okay.
People. I mean, we were a smaller group of people, but there was about 75 people all together waiting at the steps of the church membership building.
Standing there.
Yeah. And I decided to walk in. I had a white I think we had white shirts and ties on. We were all dressed really clean cut. We didn't want to go there looking like we were picketing, but it was this thing. And I think there was probably like 6 of us that walked into the room waiting for a secretary. We said, we're not leaving until someone gives us our letter of resignation. We've been asking for it.
Wow, that's drama.
It's a little drama.
It's intense.
But for someone who's been asking for it for years,
yeah.
I think it's about damn time.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
A couple hours.
Uh-huh.
And
I'm trying to imagine like the old woman at the little booth.
Oh my God.
Like
Yeah.
having to like call somebody or run upstairs to kind of tell the records. Who do we tell? Benji Schwimmer is at our door and you know, what do we do?
John, it was the funniest thing. So we went to one of the rooms first. And the secretary there, we walked in and she's like, let me guess, you're asking for your records to be removed. So there was 6 or 7 gay men standing there, right? And we just kind of nodded our heads. She's like, okay, you're actually in the wrong building. I'm going to tell you where to go. And she was really sweet about it. She's like, you need to actually go across the street to this other record building. And I thought, like, are they trying to like deceive us? Or are they trying to like smoke and mirrors? And she was actually really sweet. And she told us, so I'm not going to name names, obviously, but she's like, you know, my son's gay. And she's like, I get it. This is a worker right there in the building, a secretary. She's like, my son's gay. I get it. She's like, you guys go in peace and be kind, but it'll happen if you wait. So we waited. We sat down. It was a peaceful protest. And security came down twice to talk to us, which was really interesting. And we had no harm. We just asked for something very simple. And so a representative took all of our names, all of our addresses, and within 2 weeks, all of us got our letters.
Oh, so you didn't get the letter that moment?
They weren't able to, they have to process it. So they gave us a confirmation that they would. And I said, okay, I said, if I don't get this in a couple of days though, I said, it's going to be bad. I said, we're going to have a full blown parade in front of this door and it's going to be bad. And he's like, I promise you it'll happen. All right. So we got it. And
so within a couple weeks?
I got it within 2 weeks. All of us got them.
Nice.
And what's funny is though, is all of us asked specifically, we do not want our bishop to get the letter. We want it mailed directly to us. We do not talk to a patriarchal leader. We are our own leaders. You can send it to us. And what's funny is other than me, because I move around so much, the only address they had was my business address. So I got it here at the studio. I had my letter of resignation sent here. And for everyone else, they still sent it through their bishops. So a lot of my friends had to go to their bishops, pick up a letter, and still deal with another buffer, another invitation to repent, etc. But luckily I didn't. So, but yeah, it was great. I framed it. It was a letter of accomplishment. I have it right next to my successful missionary release letter, in my office. So.
And you say since then they've tried to contact you?
Yeah, there have been people that I know that work for either HR or that might be part of some sort of committee. I'm not privy to know exactly what the inner workings are, but where they wanted us to maybe get together and have some sort of bridging of the gap, right? For a long time, I had people asking me to get rebaptized. And then that changed from being rebaptized to, can we get together and have a meeting? And secretary of one of the 12 wanted to get together and talk about some PR things. How can we bridge this gap? And I felt like personally, they wanted a photo op. I felt like personally, they wanted just to see that they're working with an ex-member to kind of take away the power of my position as somebody who has left, right? And has successfully left without having to still be a part of the Mormon church in any direct way. And I felt like I was going to be taken advantage of. I felt like it was very, very manipulative. And I don't think that's of God. And I don't think that was a religious reason. I thought it was a PR reason. It was a public relations reason, 100%.
Yeah, because the church is trying to have this, they're trying to walk this balance where they've got this policy that many view as heinous and deadly and mean and cruel and Christ-like.
Uh-huh.
and that's still in place, but they don't want to be viewed as mean and vicious and cruel and unchristlike.
Yeah.
They certainly don't want to be associated with suicides and depression and sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And so they want to tag their name onto Love Loud or tag their name onto Encircle or have photo ops with you. And they want to kind of thread this needle of being perceived as loving gay people and totally accepting, but still holding on to the policy.
Yeah.
Talk about what you think about that mix.
I find in general that the church right now is going through some really bad growing pains. And I think because of that, like an adolescent who's going through growing pains, they're going to be very awkward. They're going to make mistakes. And I feel like instead of actually taking responsibility for those that are hurting, and instead of actually following the words and the teachings of Christ, they are going in the path of Donald Trump in the sense that it's all politics, it's all for image. They can say what they want to say, but they don't want to suffer the consequences for it. And I frankly feel like there's a huge parallel to that between current politics in the United States and what's happening with the church in general. Now, it's funny because in the Mormon church, what I feel is happening and the way that they get around things is it's the people that work for the brethren that have to do all the spinning, right? They're the ones that are doing the spinning. They're the ones that have to find cognitive dissonance and project it to the masses, right? So something happened. Do you remember the Mormon and Gay campaign that they had, the website that they put out?
Yeah.
So want to know a funny story? This is an interesting thing. Ty Mansfield made a video about it, his story, right? And I know Ty very, very well. We used to be very close as friends. We used to work in North Star together. I came out publicly to one of his firesides that he used to have with the Mattises. And interestingly enough, he posted a video where he said there was a time in my life, he had a soundbite, right? It's his story of him being gay. And it's funny, it's been changed since, it's been taken down. But he had all these pictures. He's like, there was a time in my life when I was tempted to go and make the wrong choices in my life, right? And he posted this picture of me and him right during that soundbite. There were times in my life when I was tempted to make these bad choices in my life.
I remember that.
Right.
It's got your face.
It's got my face on that soundbite. But I decided to see what's more important and this, that, and the other. First of all, Ty Mansfield and I never had anything romantically, sexually, temptuously between the two of us, ever. He was a friend. I looked up to him because I thought that he figured it out, that he broke the equation that was unbreakable. He cracked the code and he knew how to make it happen. For those of our listeners that don't know who Ty Mansfield is, he's a very well-known author who is gay, married to a woman, kids, family, yada, yada, yada. And
he wrote the book Voices of Hope, right?
Voices of Hope.
And he's been heavily involved in Journey into Manhood.
Yeah, which sounds like a gay porn. I'm sorry, that's the worst title ever.
Which is kind of these weekends where you go off and try and do macho things to repair your broken relationships with your father and to try and make you more macho. And, so that you can ungay yourself because it's some illness, abnormality that needs to be fixed. He's been part of Journey into Manhood, and he's been part of North Star, which does what types of behaviors again?
It's basically either how to deal with it. It's talking about conversion therapy. It's talking about how to reestablish the Journey into Manhood thing. It's how to learn to live with a spouse of a mixed orientation marriage, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, what it is. It's a way for guys to get that level of intimacy with another man and still make something work. And from my experience, 90% of the time, if not 100% of the time, these people cheat on their wives. From what I know, always. And it's not public knowledge, and they have these videos like they're great men, that they're totally earnest and honest, and they're living a bold-faced lie. Now, I'm not passing judgment on them directly for experimenting with men or this, that, and the other. But what I am upset with is that they create this image that they're good, that they're worthy, that they follow all the rules, and that they're happily married. They are not. I can attest to this as a witness that they are not. And these men not only are living a lie, but they treat other gay men that are not married in these groups as like concubines. I have a personal friend whose life was almost destroyed because of the likes of those groups. And he was treated by the leadership of these groups like a second-class citizen who also needed to give them naked massages all the time. It is so warped and so convoluted. I know this is heavy stuff, and I wasn't even expecting to talk about this, John, but the thing that got me closest to suicide, the thing that got me sad, the thing that made me feel so discouraged, is I saw the likes of those guys that are married and supposedly success stories, and I thought, why can't I do this? Why am I not worthy enough? Why am I not strong enough of a person? Like, I'm reading my scriptures, I'm fasting, I'm praying. How come I'm dropping the ball and they aren't? The truth is, they never had the ball to begin with, truthfully. And when I saw that picture that Ty had picked for that soundbite, one, it was a smear campaign. Two, do you know where that picture was taken at? At his wedding reception. So don't tell me that we were together. Don't make this image that I was trying to pull you on some other side. I was the first person he called when he was going to propose to his wife, right? I don't mean to get too personal with that, but I'm sorry, that's crazy to me that they did that. So I called church HR and I said, you need to remove this picture and these images right now. One, it's my intellectual property, and two, it's a bold-faced lie and a smear what you guys are doing. And it's funny because I asked church HR, I said, who edited this? Ty was in charge of it. And I don't know what kind of puppet strings are being held above him from above, but that's the ugly side of the spinning PR of the church. And it's dangerous, and it's causing people to take their lives.
And also, I think it's, we just interviewed Dusty, who, just a couple days ago, who's being excommunicated for marrying the love of his life.
Yeah.
And he
Tate,
said,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said that he knows at least one of the subjects of one of those videos of like either celibacy or mixed orientation marriage that was paraded on the Mormons and Gays website has since left the church, has not been able to sustain the lifestyle.
I know him very well.
Yeah. And this is just something, and I said it in Dusty's interview, I'm going to say it again. And it's not just Mormonism, it's evangelical Christianity, Judaism. This is this thing that Orthodox religions do where they parade people as role models for PR in the public, on magazines, on websites, during conferences. Here's an example of celibate Mormons that are making it work. Mm-hmm. Here's an example of mixed orientation marriage Mormons that are making it work. Yeah. To give people hope and inspiration that they can do it too and that they can be happy. And almost without exception, add either it's a lie when they're presenting them,
or became
as role models, or it soon becomes a lie thereafter. Yeah. Never does the religion own up to that and say, sorry, we gave you the example of, of Josh and Lolly Weed. We gave you the example of Ty and Danielle Mansfield. We gave you the example of all these other celibate Mormon men or women, or men or women in mixed orientation marriages. Yeah. And we led you down the path to make these choices. But it turns out that those people couldn't live it, or they were miserable, or they were cheating on the side. Yeah. But they never own up to that.
They never do.
They just recycle new role models. Yeah. And so add another year, the church can't use Mormon and Gays website anymore because they can't call themselves Mormons anymore. Yeah. It'll be LDS church members or Latter-day Saints who are gay.com. Yeah. And they'll have a whole new generation of celibate gay Mormon men, celibate gay, lesbian women, or, Mormons in mixed orientation marriages. Yeah. And they'll parade them as the new role models for being able to make the lifestyle work. Right. And that will, in many cases or most, be a fraud and a sham too. I just kind of monologue.
I'm just going to say amen, brother. 100%.
What is that? What is that in your view? What's the ethics or the morals of that?
The ethics is I think in general, and we know this throughout the history of the world, that religion makes you do some crazy shit. And it's the cause of wars, it's the cause of issues. And so people will do desperate things that normally no human being would ever choose to do, right? Because of pushing it for the faith. Joseph Smith and the original Mormon pioneers, they did some dark things in the name of God because they needed to in their minds. They believed it. And I feel like we're dealing with something for the first time in a long time very similar to that publicly, where people are acting in the name of God and they'll do anything that they can because it's for something that's more grandiose than law here in the States, here in the world, right? It goes beyond that. It's the eternal thing that makes things so amplified and magnified. And I feel like the church in general right now, they'll do whatever they have to do. I mean, I thought we can, they don't care in that sense, ultimately. They don't believe that they're the cause of suicide. They don't have any remorse. There's no remorse whatsoever. There's only avoid the illusion of fault, avoid the illusion of anything. That's not of God.
And what's that doing in the lives of the people impacted? The gay men and the lesbian women, the bisexual. What's it? The people celibate, the people mixed orientation marriage. What's the collateral damage of the church generation after generation, right? Luring people into celibacy or mixed orientation marriages.
It's mentally, emotionally destroying us. It's destroying our youth. It's destroying marriages. It's destroying the ability to have a healthy relationship with somebody else because it's so convoluted and it's so fake. You're literally making it impossible. We're seeing examples that are fake. It's the worst form of reality TV. You know, you're looking at, for example, I looked at Ty Mansfield. I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And then I see what's happening behind the scenes. I'm disgusted by it. And I couldn't live like that, which is why I had to leave. And so if I can say anything about those groups in general, it's not what you think it is.
You say behind the scenes what?
Behind the scenes of these men's lives that are married to women for the most part, I would say from every case that I know of, they've all faltered. And yet the illusion, the appearance seems like they're squeaky clean. Not the case. Not the case 100%. And those that get away with it are straddling a line.
You're saying that either the men are cheating or they're not happy in their marriages?
They're cheating. They're cheating.
Okay.
They're cheating. And you can define whatever cheating might be to you, but like having a naked massage party with all of your forcefully straight, gay, Mormon, married men, like a massage party naked, that's a little weird when you're aroused and you're touching everywhere. That's odd to me. That's an odd behavior.
And you're saying active believing Mormons are doing this?
Board members of these groups.
North Star and
the likes.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're seeing that. No wonder why I can't fit that mold. And they parade their partnerships, they parade their wives at these events like these giant success stories. And I see, what really hurts sometimes is I've been to a couple where we've had, like Josh Weed, who I adore. He's a great guy. Happy coming out, brother. He and I talk a little bit. She talked about gay sex the other day. I was telling him what to do, what not to do.
Josh, tell our listeners who Josh and Lolly Weed are, for those who don't know.
So Josh was also another, completely separate from any of those organized groups, but he wrote a blog basically about he and his wife, how they're making it work. He's identified as a gay man, but they have kids, and they're going to make it work. And they did for several years. And finally, they even had to admit, and I loved what he did. He was just very honest. We just can't make it work. We love each other. We love our family, but this is something we cannot sustain. And of all people, that is to me, they were very honest about what happened. And I hope that these other men can be honest too, because I know deep down inside they're good people, and their wives are trying to make something work that can't. It's a square peg in a round hole, just can't do it. But going back, Josh, he and I were both speaking at a conference years ago, and I was representing the ex-Mormon side. He was representing the stick with it side, and it was kind of a way to kind of encircle the wagons. No matter what you believe, it's okay, just find your path. And I would probably never do that now in hindsight, right? But it was a way for us to kind of not show that we hate one another and that you can still be friends with those that are still in the church, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just really interesting to see that dichotomy and for him to speak on that side of the fence, to me speak on that side of the fence. And he and I at dinner, we got along. I sat next to he and his wife. It was great. We were talking, we were chatting it up, and we could hug it out. We were cool. We talked about mutual beliefs and interests on how to help people. And the one thing that he never did is I remember he said, I never want to give somebody a false sense of hope. But I do remember being at that conference and some of those other couples were there. And I remember they would walk around, like peacocks, just holding hands and arms around their wives. And I saw some of these younger gay men, women, and even transgendered individuals just looking at them like, I'm never going to be able to do that. I remember walking into that room, and I never went back to that conference for this reason. it was almost saying, look what you don't have. Look what we have. Listen to us, adore us, applaud us, but you can't have this. And it's true. And I saw more people shut down. I saw teenagers look sad as opposed to feeling inspired. And it's true. And there's also this thing called the book club. I don't know if you've heard about that same group of people, the North Star people, their upper echelon group have something called a book club. And they go to Sugar House, which is a predominantly gay area of Salt Lake City. It's like where the Gold's Gym is, I think. And there's a sauna there. And they call it their book club. And what they do is they get butt naked in a sauna. They see naked men come in and out, and they call it their canteen filling sessions so that they can have enough images in their heads to have successful sex with their wives. But they're doing it for God, so it's okay. They'll do anything that they possibly can to make it work. And I think what these men are doing is a direct reflection of what the church is trying to do. And I feel like that's the correlation right there, personally.
So what if somebody were to say, hey, you know what? It's not either or. It's not black or white. Like, okay, they're not living the law of chastity as your orthodox Mormon would think.
Okay.
But they are living the spirit of the law by not actually having butt sex, or they're not, as you call it, anal sex. They're not having oral sex. They're not actually touching each other in their private parts. So they're living the letter of the law, of the law of chastity, and in some ways the spirit of the law. But they're choosing religiously, it's their right to choose a faithful temple Mormon marriage. And they're in a very progressive, liberal way, just like
they are.
Just like some Mormons don't believe the Bible's literal.
Yeah.
Some Mormons don't believe it's the one true church,
Sure.
but they find spiritual meaning.
Yeah.
These gay men or lesbian women or bi whoever, they're being creative and progressive to live either the spirit of the letter of the law and to live God's law. What's wrong with that?
Oh, what's wrong with it is that they present it not in that package. They don't say that they're doing that.
Right.
I would be totally cool with, hey, look, my wife and I were cool. I got a guy on the side. We make it work. It's great. Like, I respect your open poly, very close to, polygamist, old school, like Joseph Smith centric, like Mormon vibes. Like, go you, like millennial all the way, fine. And if that's your game, if that's your jam, great, right? But the problem is these people are playing it as if they were a member of the quorum of the first presidency. They're playing it like, this is my wife, this is my companion, this is me, and here we are. And they're not doing that. And so for me, it's the falsehood, it's the pretenses, it's the image, the illusion that they're creating is what they're telling people to do, but it's not what they're living. Last time I checked, that's a hypocrisy. And that's exactly what it is. I would have no problem if one of those guys, one of the Time Mansfields of the world said, look, I occasionally have someone on the side. I'd be okay with that, as long as they were open about it. And then maybe people would want to make it work in the church. But you're right, then it's a very liberal perspective to have. But these people are staunch. They're going full Nephi on us, or at least pretending to be. And I feel like that's what I fell enslaved to that. I felt like, okay, that's how I have to live. But they weren't. A lot of nude pictures being sent back and forth. A lot of this, that, a lot of just lines being crossed. And if I were a wife, if I were a significant other to somebody that was doing that with a member of that similar sex, I would be brutally hurt. I would be brutally hurt. And I feel so bad for these women and men. I feel bad for all of them, to be honest with you, because they've fallen into this trap of a mold that does not work. It's a mold that doesn't work. And no matter how you slice it, it's not going to fit. It just won't. Unless you have a very liberal perspective on it, but they don't. Or at least they present something that isn't.
And I'm thinking a little bit about this idea that they might say to you, it does work for us. Don't tell us it doesn't work.
Sure.
Maybe it's a low libido wife that isn't really interested in sex anyway.
Sure.
And she's like, okay, go do your little touching party thing or your holding party thing or whatever. But I don't care because I want kids and I want our marriage to stay together
Sure.
and this works for us. Don't Benji tell us that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I know you would say that's okay. That's their choice. But I think we've already answered it. It's the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
In other words, what we would want is the church to say, you can choose celibacy, right?
Yeah.
Choose celibacy, but know that you're going to have likely to have horrible quality of life, depression, anger, sadness, loneliness, and it's going to be super hard and miserable.
Yeah.
And you may want to kill yourself, but if you want to choose that and to carry your cross, do it.
Yeah.
But just know there's significant mental and physical health risks associated with it.
Right.
And if you want to do a mixed orientation marriage, do it, but know that the way that the people that we parade around are actually doing it is having these touching parties, having these holding parties, having guys on the side, journey into manhood, naked stuff.
Yeah.
And that's going to, you're allowed to do that because that's how these dudes that we're parading around are doing it.
Yeah.
So let's just say in general conference or in the handbook of gay progressive Mormonism, these things are okay. Because we're allowing it behind the scenes anyway. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, on the streets, we call that a side piece.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if that's what you're going to do, you're right. But like, the fact that you had to make that whole long-winded explanation of it leads me to believe that that's never going to happen within Mormonism, because they don't even want to get connected to their polyamorous roots. They're trying to remove themselves from that, 100%. So it's just not going to happen. They asked me one time, John, I don't know if I said this, but they asked, Ty was approached to help author a book about my story. I was going to make a coming out book and about how I'm successfully living this chaste life as a member of the church, and I'm satisfied and I'm happy. And it was pushed really hard on me by the church and by him. And I kept telling him, I'm like, I haven't arrived. I'm struggling. I was in love with that boy still. I was in love with John still. How are you to ask me to do this? And he's like, no, just write the book. But that's what I'm trying to say is he knew that I was not, feet were planted. He knew that I was wavering. He knew that I was struggling so much, and he still thought it was okay to use me as a poster child for something that I'm apparently making work. And I feel like that's what the church is doing with a lot of these married couples. You're making it work. It didn't work for the weeds. You know what I mean? It's not working for anyone else that I know of. Literally, anyone else. So I think sometimes the hooks are pulled out. The fish is not ready to be caught. I don't think we're ever ready for that, personally.
And not to pick on Ty, but it was Dean Bird before him, and it'll be someone after Ty Mansfield.
Yeah.
They've got these sort of consultants on LGBT stuff that are like in the inner circles, helping them form policies, being the behind-the-scenes leaders. They'll head the North Star Conference. They'll keynote the North Star Conference. They'll strategize on the videos that go on Mormons and Gays.
Yeah.
They're these sort of LGBT consultants that are inner circle, powerful, working at BYU on the side. Who knows if there's money, favors being exchanged for their consultancy.
Yeah.
And
those book deals.
With book deals, with Deseret Book. And who knows what donors are encouraged to give to North Star or what donors are encouraged to give to these conferences. Who knows what backdoor money or influence or favors are given.
Yep.
And Ty's just one of a string of past and future inner players that are likely getting privilege, but the dark side is kind of how it plays out in the lives of all the other people that get impacted.
Of all of them. It's a curtain. It's the wizard behind the curtain. It's big smoke, it's big mirrors, it's a big head, but truly it's just somebody pulling the strings behind it. It's not real. And
then really quickly, there are these people that are really good. Tom Christofferson was really good about this. Josh and Lolly Weed were really good about this. They would say, I'm telling my truth, but I'm no role model.
Exactly.
Right? Don't, number one, don't follow my example.
Right.
And don't, straight members, don't pressure your LGBT family and friends to follow my role model either.
Right.
And so I really respect them
Me too.
for saying that.
Me too.
But is there a challenge or a risk with just presenting yourself, just speaking publicly? That's what's hard. They should be able to speak publicly and tell their story and tell their truth. But then even if you are telling your story and saying I'm not a role model, how does that play out for those that are listening?
Well, I mean, for instance, just at least from my personal experience, I made my Mormon Stories podcast 7 years ago, and yet to this day, people think that my worldview is very specific. Like, are you still in love with that? Are you still in love with that boy? Are you, people just assume that the moment you make a statement, right, that is your belief forever and ever. It's perpetual, right? So I feel like
what I'm also just saying, not to interrupt, but what I'm also just saying is that even, and I love Tom Christopherson. I love Benji I love Josh and Lolly.
Was that a Freudian slip there, John?
No. I think they are people of integrity.
They are.
I think they're doing good. I think they're helping people. I've just sort of struggled with this idea that even when those people get up and say, don't follow my example, people still will.
Yeah.
Because they're speaking up.
Yeah, and I think that's just part of human nature. In particular, in our Mormon community, we tend to look at somebody who is speaking at a pulpit and follow. We're kind of conditioned to do that, especially in this world, in this community. But I think the world in general, people that are vocal, if they have a voice, we have ears. We're going to listen no matter what, which is why I think it's important for someone like you, John, where you're bringing in many voices constantly so that it's more of a movement. It's a wave of sound and words and emotions and people and perspectives, as opposed to these very hyper-select reveals and media drips and certain books that are being released. I feel like there's just not enough content. And I think that's indicative to truth, right? I think the truth that you're presenting here with Mormon Stories is interesting because you're having so many people talk about different facets and shades, and it's creating this beautiful, what I call like a harmonious theory, so to speak, of kind of what the movement is talking about, what's really happening in our lives and our experiences, where it's so cherry-picked from the PR side of the Mormon church, where you have to follow these people because there's just a couple of voices. What you do good is that you have multiple people speaking all the time. And I think it's smart. I think it's healthier. I think hearing this, it's not just a form of group speak because you're dealing with us one-on-one, but there's constant content. What you do is wonderful. And it's literally the opposite of what the church is doing. They're bringing out just the two people that can be mouthpieces, and that's it. It's politics. It's literally politics. This is talk radio, countering the politics, so to speak, if you will. Not to say that we're anti, but to say that we're talking about truth. We're talking about experience, and we're being honest. And to go with something, I don't feel like if I'm talking on Mormon Stories, it's just my story. And you're very smart about saying it's a story. It's my perspective. It's my image. I might see things differently. My lens, my experience is totally different. And how I'm presenting it today is based upon my emotions today, right? So don't, piggybacking off the weeds, for example, don't use me as an example. You did something, and I wanted to always call you out about it, actually, one time. So on one of the parts of the episode when we were talking years ago, you're like, Benji, wouldn't it be one of those great moments if you could just say, wish you wouldn't have gone through so much pain and trauma? Wouldn't it be just nice to say, I'm just going to love who I love and leave? And I looked at you like, no, like I wish I would have. And it seemed like you were trying to get to a space where you were trying to get me to say, I wish I just would have left and not have to gone through hell and back and suicidality and this, that, and the other, right? That was for me personally. And so in that moment, I've heard people actually message me, interestingly enough, about that moment saying, Benji, I'm trying everything that I can. I'm going to do change therapy for at least a year right now and see how that goes. I'm going to date women and do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, oh my God, they're trying to follow the method that I went through, right? So I get what you're saying because I don't want anybody to follow what I did. And I know what you were trying to say. You were trying to say, it's easier just to leave. If you want to love somebody, love somebody. Don't go through hell if you don't have to, right? And I just wanted to call you out on that because I think you were trying to wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like, Benji, this is an unhealthy pattern here 7 years ago. And I want to let people know, like, I don't want people to have to suffer. I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. It's not fun. It's beautiful on the other side, but it's not fun. And obviously, per this interview, I'm still going through it. I think it's a constant. We're going to have to, 27 years of something is not easy to remove by the time you're 34. So just in general, I agree. I don't think that we should have these mouthpieces, but I think if you do share a story, you're going to help more people than you will hurt them, but there will always be people that will follow. There will always be people that are going to look to you as an example, and I think that's just part of human nature. I think in Mormonism, we just have a lot more of those types of mentalities. We've drunk the Kool-Aid. for a very long time.
Yeah. And I just want to tell Tom Christofferson and Josh and Lollyweed, if you're watching or listening, I love you, and you're inspirational to me, and you're heroes to me. So we're just trying to talk about hard stuff. I hope you guys understand that.
Yeah.
They probably won't listen, but
yeah,
yes, they do.
C'est la vie.
Okay, so let's talk about, just really quickly, there's something really, there's two things I want to talk about at least as we're kind of coming to the close.
Sure.
One was, oh my gosh. So I'm interviewing Dusty last week, and his beautiful partner Tate is right there on the side. And so for those of you who don't know, this is really important. There's a gentleman that you will have just, the interview prior to this one, I interviewed Dusty or Dustin Wilson Johns, and he married a woman, had a couple kids, mixed orientation marriage, was a disaster, got divorced, had a bunch of head surgeries, skull surgeries, was dripping cerebral spinal fluid, but finally got well, found the love of his life. And during that had this theophany with God where he's like, I'm sticking with Mormonism. I'm going to go to church as a faithful gay man with my boyfriend, then husband, and I'm going to just stay in the church because this is my spiritual home. So he and his partner in Idaho start attending their Idaho Falls ward and are embraced and loved. And the irony that was just so devastating that I want you to comment on is if they had just left the church forever in 2018 and just if he had just never had a partner and never got married and just had whatever relationships he had, maybe even unsafe, church leaves him alone. Mm-hmm. If he were to just have boyfriends and live-in boyfriends or whatever, church leaves him alone.
Yeah.
If he were even to get same-sex married and live his life, church probably leaves him alone.
Yeah.
What is it that gets him threatened with the disciplinary council, which I think is going to be October 16th,
wow,
8 p.m. in Idaho Falls? Be watching for the notification because we want as many people as possible to show up to that, by the way.
Absolutely.
But what got him a disciplinary council was that he wanted to keep coming to church. And with his partner. And what was ironic about that is that the ward was loving him and the bishop was loving them and accepting them.
Right.
And yet it's like something flipped and it's just like, we can't have a happy, monogamous gay couple bringing their two blonde, cute boys with bow ties to church. And so we're going to have to excommunicate them.
Yeah.
Whereas we'll leave alone not just all these other versions of being gay, but we're going to leave alone the rapist or the child molester or the adulterer. None of them are going to get excommunicated, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be Dusty and his partner, his husband, his legal husband, who are in love, going to church, being monogamous and being healthy and happy. Shouldn't they be wanted most in church? What are your thoughts about all that? I'm sorry that was a monologue again, but I'm kind of angry about it.
That's amazing. Well, I'll put it into this perspective. If I'm the church, I would kick them out immediately.
Why?
Because that's the biggest danger they could ever let. That is the biggest shark swimming in their tank. Why? Because you're seeing a model family that is alternative to the model family of Mormonism, which is ironic because we started out with polygamy. We are the model alternative lifestyle in general, in terms of our genesis. But of course, like if I'm the Mormon church, John, and I'm seeing this happy couple that's being embraced by everybody, that is the biggest negative influence you could ever find.
Why?
Because they're normalizing everything that we preach to be darkness. They're normalizing everything that I thought was darkness. They're showing you that we can humanize this, we can love this, we can embrace this in our communities. They're raising two successful children, and they're spiritual, and they believe in God, and they worship, and they're reading the Book of Mormon, and they love each other, and they're committed to each other. Oh my God, what's happening? And of course, they're going to start causing schisms in people's beliefs. It's going to be a problem.
What will the people think?
Well, either the people are going to treat them terribly or they're going to embrace them with love, because we're told to always treat our gay members of the church with love. But once you start letting them in, you start seeing this is a normal thing. I'm seeing them as a Mormon family. Why can't the gays get married in the temple? Why can't these questions? And then those questions start happening. Then they turn on Mormon Stories. They listen to 3 podcasts and they're having a faith crisis. And the church knows this. So if anything, they're the best splinter cells we could have inside the walls of the Mormon church. I have an ex of mine who still attends church actively, and he's openly gay, and he goes every Sunday, and he does that specifically because he wants to be on that side of the fence to show and normalize people. It's almost his way. He doesn't really care about church anymore, but he does it because he wants people to see that we're not invisible. I can't. Emotionally, I can't do that. I live my life. I seek happiness, and if people want to see that, they'll peek in, and then they'll know. But I get it, and that is the most difficult splinter cell to attack, and that's what's happening with Dusty and Tate. And I think it's beautiful what they did. I think if their children were older, they probably would get to a place where they would probably have to leave unless something changed. And so I would want to protect my children and leave as soon as possible. But I get if that's the men that they are, their children, like they were raised in the church, so why not raise your children in the church just like that, just with a little bit of a twist to it? Most drinks taste better with the twist of lime, so put a twist of gay in something and it might be a little sweeter, a little better. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you hear about Oakes's talk at General Conference a couple of weeks ago? October 2018. What do you think about the church's rhetoric now about LGBT people in 2018?
Let me preface this with a statement. In general, John, one thing that I've tried to do recently is this. I'm always here, obviously, being a gay man. I stand for a cause that I think is pretty globally accepted, but still we have a lot of legwork to do. But one thing that I've done recently, and I'm going to challenge our members that are listening, people that are listening right now, to do the same. And it's something that I learned recently, actually listening to a podcast about Black rights. When I go to the airport most of the time, I'll wear a shirt about causes that don't affect me directly. So for example, I wear a Black Lives Matter shirt often when I go to the airport, and I fly at least twice a week. And it's funny that the looks that I get at the airport from like a lot of, especially cisgendered white people, like they'll look at me with these eyes of almost confusion and sometimes often disgust. It's like, why are you doing that? You're a white man. Why are you saying Black Lives Matter? I'm just saying Black Lives Matter. I'm not saying that no other lives don't matter, right? I'll wear trans rights shirts. I have a pin that's a trans rights pin. I'll do these things in general because I feel like we sometimes, if something directly affects us, if I'm a cancer survivor, I'm going to wear the pink ribbon. But sometimes if something doesn't directly affect us directly, we should be the ones that actually stand up for those that are suffering because of those consequences. And so, for example, I think it's more powerful when John DeLynn has a rainbow wristband on than when Benji Schwimmer doesn't. I think it's more powerful when I see a straight person of privilege, right, saying something and standing up for something, because that actually can change people's opinions often. So I just wanted to say something really quickly, that I feel like the church, the gay issue is going to be terrible because it's happening so much, but I think trans issues are something, it's the next frontier of what we need to start dealing with and preparing ourselves for, to be educated, to know what is correct terminology, to be sensitive to that, to be sensitive to gender and identities within that. And a lot of people just identify as queer, and it's a very kind of umbrella term for people to just say that they're different. They're not following the heteronormative life. But just to be sensitive to that. Sorry, I just wanted to interject that because I feel like that's something that's very important to me, to stand up for our transgendered members of the church and transgendered individuals that are even just maybe like gender fluid, that don't even have a stance of one or the other. I think it's important to be sensitive to their needs, because I feel like sometimes they get forgotten and left by the wayside, and I can say this, that I'm a cisgendered male homosexual who happens to have like months where he's checking out women, but it's to me, it's important to be sensitive to all of those needs. So I love that you just said LGBT, like to add the T in the Q is really important to me. So thank you for doing that. Sorry, I just felt like I needed to say that. Going back to Oakes's statement, in general, how does it make me feel? I feel like it just shows that the brethren are not connected to a source that's higher. That's all I'm going to say on that. I don't feel like I can say anything that hasn't already been said on Reddit. I tend to, I'm affected when people are affected by things. I'm not directly affected by any of the words that the leaders of the church, the brethren, could say at this point. In fact, if anything, it just makes my decision feel more and more validated personally. It boggles my mind that I used to once almost hero worship these people. And I used to think that they were completely infallible, and I would read their words to the utmost degree and study them as if they were scripture. And it's shocking now, once you break that glass globe and you start picking up that thing and you're trying to see if it makes sense, it just doesn't. And I think Oakes is, he's covering himself. He's setting a line in the sand. I feel like this new policy, the statements that happen at conference are all ways now, and this is what the church has figured out. We can't cure anyone. We can't bury anyone. So let's just purge them. Let's kick them out. We would rather have a mass exodus of all those that are queer, questioning, different, fringe members of society. Just leave so that we can build our beehive again. And I really feel like that's what's happening in the church right now. They can't fix things. There's no system. There's no evergreen that can change our sexual identities. There's no therapy that's actually working. There's no conferences that are actually having success stories at this point. So what we're going to do is we are going to do things, offend anybody that slightly is off, and have them push themselves out of the church. We want them out. I think that's what's happening right now.
Part of what's crazy about Oakes in particular, and I don't mean to out anyone, and maybe I won't use names, but
yeah,
we
know,
and I've known this for years.
So have I.
But it's just come out as kind of more publicly that Elder Oakes has a gay grandson.
At least one.
Yeah, at least one, right?
At least one.
Yeah, and so when he makes these statements, like, of course they're horrific for anyone
globally,
but we're knowing that he knows he has a gay grandson, or more LGBT family members.
Yeah.
And he's still willing to make these statements.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? Like, I don't believe these are just evil, dark, cold, feelingless people. And yet he's willing to say those types of things to the world, knowing blood family. He's talking about them when he says these things.
I mean, Abraham, Isaac, he lifted the knife. He lifted the knife. So if you truly believe this is of God, you will have to do it. The one thing that I think, though, if there was an element of Christian love and charity in Elder Oakes' talk, he would have mentioned his grandson. He would have mentioned how hard it would be for him to talk about this. He would have acknowledged that to show an ounce of sensitivity, but he didn't. So when you say that these men are very loving and this, that, and the other, maybe. But from what I see, they act hell of a lot like a sociopath. So that's just my personal opinion, but I'm a little bit farther removed than most are. But I see no sense of empathy from these men. I see sexism, I see heterosexism, I see homophobia, and I see a lot of hate and a lot of fear and a lot of PR. That is the absence of love to me.
Any quick comment on the Sam Young Protect LDS Children thing, the interviews, and the fact that they would excommunicate Sam?
Well, first of all, I heard Sam is also a ballroom dancer as well as Bill here, so I think that's amazing, brother. If you ever want a lesson as well, come down to Redlands. I think what Sam has done is wonderful. I think a lot of my sexual hang-ups and traumas as a child were based upon... I remember when I was 11 years old, my bishop asked me if I touched myself, and I didn't know what that meant. Of course I touched myself. I showered, I picked my nose. What does that mean? And it almost created a gateway of finding out about sex and masturbation earlier on so that you become fixated upon it. And so in general, I think what Sam's doing is amazing. I think, again, if you have a threat in the church will X you. It's what happened with everybody. It's what happened with Quinn. It's what happened with everybody. Like they're gonna kick out the ones that actually pose a threat. And you know what though? To be honest with you, if I had cancer in my body, which poses a threat to my health, I would kill it too with chemo, right? So I think that's what they're looking at us as. The sad thing is we are not cancer. We're trying to save lives. We're trying to improve lives. We're trying to better lives. We're trying to create a better culture and community for many people, for millions of people, that should not be eradicated. That should be magnified. And that's what you're doing, right? That's what we're doing. And it's really sad that we're being viewed as cancerous, as opposed to vitamins, as opposed to the balm of Gilead, as opposed to things that can actually help people, to actually make Mormonism an actual workable thing for everyone. It's not. And so yeah, unfortunately, I think he is the cancer. I think they are the cancer. I think their PR is the cancer. I think their organization and their finances, I think all of that, the corporation, is a cancer to what could ultimately be a great community. And it's very, very unfortunate that they're kicking out some of the best and brightest. Truly.
And tons of love to his family members and others.
Absolutely.
Because all the apostles have LGBT family members in one way or another.
If they aren't themselves.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Boyd K was a total homo. Sorry to the Packers, but Boyd was a mo. Boyd was a mo.
You heard it here first on Mormon
Boyd was
Stories.
a mo. He was family.
Okay, so let's talk about you talked about this a little bit earlier, but as we're kind of wrapping up, where are you spiritually? Where are you belief-wise? Kind of, how are you doing health-wise? And what is your life like now? How do you thrive, and spiritually or otherwise?
I think, and maybe it's different because I'm an artist, right? But to me, art and that creative realm of the brain is spiritual, right? Because it's something that we're creating from nothing. Right? It's a force that's invisible. And I feel in tune with my own sense of spirituality through art, through expression. And I think it's always been that case. I think preaching in Oaxaca was art. It was poem, right? It was physical service. It was labors of love. So to me, I don't worry about how is my spirituality. I worry about how is my mental and emotional state, because the spirituality will shine through in the art personally. I like connecting with friends. I like connecting with individuals. I like having intimate conversations. I like memories. Recently, something that happened in my life recently, I think that maybe the members would be curious about, is my father. If you did see So You Think You Can Dance, my dad was the guy that wore the electric sign that cheered me on all the time. He was my first dance coach. He's an amazing dancer. I'm going to post on Facebook today a video that we just found of my dad dancing when I was still inside the womb. My dad was baller. He was badass. He's a genius. And my dad has been really sick, very, very sick. He has Agent Orange poisoning from serving in Vietnam as a medic. And he was in like the worst parts of Vietnam, right through the rivers, and even his legs are discolored from crossing the rivers from the poison itself. And he's had a myriad of illnesses and faulty heart, faulty kidneys, faulty liver, faulty this, that, and the other, to the point that he's just been very, very sick. And I've had Mormon friends in particular jump on that. When I told friends and family that my dad was relatively terminal, that he's got a very short window to live and stay with us, immediately half my Mormon fans and family were like, if there's anything we can do, we love you. And then the other half were, it's about time that you accept the priesthood back in your lives for a blessing. And one that turned me off, like, you have no idea, because to me, all you would have to do is just say, if you need anything, we're here. All right? You don't have to force the preaching on me at any moment. But I have had a lot of Mormon friends and even some ex-Mormon friends that have asked me, now that you've been faced with the first loss, a potential loss in your life, how do you cope with that? When you found out that your dad had very little left to live, did you pray? What was your first instinct? And what's funny? I didn't. That's what's crazy. I actually thought I probably would have. And I think all of us, maybe at one time, a lot of us ex-believers would probably do if there is a God, I'm going to be praying to this God. Please, God, help if you could. If not, I totally get it. I'm not really doing my thing here. I think people do that sometimes, but I don't want to play that game. I know, like I'm flawed as as flawed as they come, but deep down inside, I think I'm a good person. I can say that as much of a perfectionist and the darkness that I have inside me. I think I'm a good person, and I try and be kind and honest to people, and I try and help people, and I work hard, and I try and set a good example to my students and people and friends, and I feel like that's as much of a spiritual practice that I can do. I think it's that alone, just showing kindness. So if there's any faith that I follow, it's just trying to give a little kindness back to the world, and also working to create a good, positive legacy for yourself in whatever you do. With my dad, instead of praying for him to be healed, I research and WebMD the shit out of the internet. I call out every doctor if they did one thing wrong. I'm on top of it. I'm sharp. Instead of hoping, I'm acting. I am doing whatever I can to help my dad. And we actually found an experimental procedure that had I not been focused, he would have already been dead. And so what I'm counting now, instead of sitting on my knees, I'm opening my eyes, and I'm so grateful for every moment that I have with him. I'm cherishing moments more now because I don't know if there's an after. I don't think there's an after, but I know there's a legacy left. And I think it's more important to leave legacy and to remember and to make memories than to just cognitively think that something will be better after the fact. I don't want that for myself. I don't want to cheat myself out of that with my dad or my mother when it happens, or with my sister or my family or my future husband or my children. I don't want to cheat myself and say, well, we'll have the next life. I personally believe that that's a cop-out, and you're missing out on the now. You're missing out on every possible moment you could have to live. The church was a numbing agent for me. It was a heavy weight, and it was a numbing agent. And in this case, I personally feel like I am living my life and I'm loving my life. Whatever problems or traumas we have, what's great about the trauma of my dad being sick, John, is that I could be sad about him being sick and just think I'll enjoy you later in heaven. Or I can say, yeah, it sucks, but let's enjoy now. Let's laugh. I'll be your wingman. Let's pick up on women. Let's do whatever. Like, I tell him about butt sex and he laughs. He thinks it's great. Like, I took him to a comedy show that was a gay themed night, and they picked him out of the audience. They're like, oh, is that your son? And in gay terms, that's your younger boyfriend. He's like, yeah, this is my son. And so, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, family, isn't it about time? Fuck yeah, it is. Your time with your family, with your friends, with your life is now. And that's all that I know. And I don't know anything else. You can believe in string theory. You can believe in quantum this and that. You can believe in Buddhism. You can believe in Taoism, whatever. There's so many things to believe in. I just know that what I have is short with the ones that I love, and I want to make the best of it and the most of it. And ultimately, that's what I love. That's what I respect.
So what if when you die, that's it? What if that's the end of Benji? What do you think about that?
If I die, when I die, what's really cool, similar, I'm actually retiring at the end of this year in my final world competition, my final world championships. And I know that I've left a legacy. And ultimately, in a universal perspective, we're not even a pale blue dot on the radar, right? We're nothing. 2 seconds, it's nothing, right? But for the time being, I know that I will have a lasting effect on the lives of people, whether it's through my words of what I've done to come out, whether it's through my dancing and my art, which I think is the biggest thing that I'll probably leave. But more than anything, my friends, my family, my lover, that's the only legacy that I need. My future children, they'll continue. They'll grow. You know, hopefully I'll be able to rear them up. But if I were to die today, then I would die a happy man. I will die knowing that I did everything that I could to make the best of it. And I think that's ultimately all that any of us could ever ask. Am I perfect? No. Am I worrying about an atonement? No. Do I have a checkboard of every error that I've ever made? Not anymore. And yeah. So if this giant ceiling fan falls on top of me right now, You heard it first and you heard it last. I'm dying happy. So it's okay. And that's life. And if I was dying slowly, I don't think I would fear the afterlife. I wouldn't fear purgatory, because I do remember from the first podcast when I had that spiritual experience. You'd have to watch it. I don't want to recount the whole thing. But that still small voice told me it was okay to leave. So whether that was my subconscious, whether that was the universe, intelligent design, God, Elohim, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm grateful for it either way. I'm grateful for the journey, and I'm where I need to be. So that's what I know. That's what I feel. That's that.
So in terms of, and that was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
How can you retire? You're still young. You're still talented. Some would say you're at the top of your game. What if, some might say, I don't believe he's retiring. He'll say that, but he'll be back in a couple of years. Yeah. Or do you even know how much you're going to miss it, how devastating that'll be? And when you say retire, you mean from competing. At the World Swing Dance Championship. Right. We'll talk about how sure you can retire.
Well, and
why?
I've been doing this since I was a kid. I've been competing since I was, 3. I've been competing as an adult since I was 17. And it's not that it's not a challenge, because the challenge is always just yourself. It's beating yourself. It's getting better every year. There's a couple of reasons why. One of them was Kobe Bryant, who's an idol of mine. We've talked about this before, John. I'm a huge basketball Laker, in particular Kobe Bryant fan. And it was one of those things where his body started to break down because he worked so hard. Right? But you can play into your 40s. Yeah, but I'd be playing at 40%. And I'm an alpha when it comes to this stuff. And if I can't kill, I'd rather retire. And I think I want to go out in my prime. I don't want to go out when I'm tapering down. And I think I've created a piece this year that it's kind of my way to let the world know that it's a letter to the dance world, basically, and it's just kind of a full spectrum appreciation for what I've had on the dance floor, what I've been able to share, what I experienced behind, like kind of removing the curtain. It kind of talks about what I'm actually feeling behind the smile, behind the rhinestones, behind the big tricks and dips and this, that, and the other. And then I knew it was going to be this year or next year. It was just a matter of listening to my body. Like, I have a dislocated pelvis right now. I have a cracked rib, 2 fractures in my left foot right now. I'm a walking sore man. And the thing is, I could downgrade my dance level and still probably win. But that's not what it's about for me. It's not about beating people. I don't care about that at all. In fact, half of my competition I choreograph and coach in hopes that they could beat me. But it's more about wanting to finish maximum with a legacy. And so for me, ultimately, I'm going to retire because I also don't know how much more time I have left with my family. And it would not be right to hold that trophy up without my entire family there, without my mom and my dad, because they taught me everything. Before I could walk, there's a video of me dancing in a Johnny jump up. They held one side and my feet are kicking to the legs, like I was dancing before I was walking. And even if people don't appreciate dance, I think they can either appreciate the sport of it or the nostalgia of what I've encountered. My grandfather was a swing dancer. My dad's a swing dancer. My mom's like a brilliant gymnast, ballroom dancer, ballet dancer. My parents do it all. And they may not have been able to provide certain things, but they provided me with this gift to cultivate my talents. And I want to give my mom and dad that satisfaction in seeing me take my final bow. And I'm doing it for them. I could have retired years ago. I have nothing to prove, except for, can I do it one more time? And can I be better? And I will. Broken or not, doesn't matter. Humpty Dumpty, KT tape my entire body. It's going to happen. Yeah.
So ultimately, you want your parents, including your dad, who is, are you saying he's terminal? Is that?
Yeah, it's relatively the case, yeah.
You want him to be there?
Yeah.
You want him to see that final performance?
Yeah, I do. And he took a special surgery a couple months back to prolong his situation. He had 6 days to live. And I told him, I'm like, Dad, this is my last year. You know, I want you to be there. And it was one of the things that I said. I told him, I said I wanted to compete one more time and I wanted him to be there for my retirement. And he decided to take the procedure subsequently because of that. And so I'm doing this for a different reason now. It's wonderful to do. It's not for money or titles or fame. It's literally just to give back. And it's wonderful. And I feel much more motivated. And I'm actually looking forward, John, the moment I retire, I won't have to think about competition. So I could do a dance video every week just to do it, just to choreograph more, just to do something different. You know, choreograph a Broadway show, do this, that, and the other. To be able to do that, it would be great. People feel like they talk about So You Think You Can Dance because they probably haven't seen some of the stuff that I've done because it's been in this bubble of competition. And that's okay. And so I think it's time for me to be known. I have a TV show in the works. I have a deal that I'm working through Netflix that we're looking on doing a new show. And all of that's going to be happening in the next year. But I wouldn't be able to focus on those lifelong things. Like, I make decent money, I can support myself, but I want to support a family and have the security. And I can't spend $5,000 on physical therapy bills and special diets. I want to be able to raise a family. And so I need to convert my work for the next goal in my life. And that's to have the family, to have the white picket fence, to have the beautiful husband. And to do that, I need to retire. You have to be very self-centered and focused when you're a competitor. And it's time for me to open my wings a little bit and to care for others in a different light. And if I don't take away this dark passenger of competitive behaviors and energy, it just won't happen for me.
So you want a traditional marriage in the sense of a monogamous partner and possibly kids? And
yeah, I do. And John, I haven't had it for a very long time. And this was actually an awakening once my dad sat me in his deathbed, basically. Before he got that procedure, he said, Benji, you've taken care of boyfriends that don't love you. You've taken care of your family. You've taken care of me for 6 years since I've been sick. He's like, when are you going to find happiness and take care of yourself? And that hit me really hard. And I love dancing so much, and it's not going to change. If anything, I'm going to be able to embrace dancing even more. And I love it. I'm going to be able to teach and work with people even more. And the moment that Buddy Schwimmer is no longer able to be here and to teach, I never will be able to do it, but somebody's got to try and fill in his shoes. And if I'm focused as a competitor, I will not have the awareness and the mindfulness that he has being a non-competitor. And so to honor my family, I want to do that. And I don't want to go down at 80%. If I'm not going to be fucking 100, I don't want to do it at all. So there's that too, which is a common theme in my life, I guess. But yeah, go big, go home.
I love it. So final message, a lot of our listeners asked you if you could speak to your younger self, and you've said it throughout, but let's just, if you want to summarize.
Sure.
If you could speak to your younger self, or if there's young gay Mormon men that are either in the church or about to leave or doubting, or just humans who are living their life, Mormon or not, and you're giving wisdom or perspective or advice to kind of those people. But if you want to target it to a young gay Mormon man, but I think this wisdom is for all of us, not just them.
Yeah.
What would you say?
It's funny you talk about, like, I know a lot of people always talk about if you could talk to your younger self. Like, one thing that I have on my phone right now, literally, is a picture of me as a kid. Goofy-eyed, cross-eyed, goofy.
That's you.
That's me. Yeah, that's little Benji man, Daniel Schwimmer. And I recently, as I've been trying to go through this experience of understanding myself and just as I'm transitioning from the retirement thing and I'm gearing up to hopefully prepare for a family someday, sooner than later, and I've been reminded through my dad's experience, and my mom, I need to give her credit. My mom, Lori, she has been such a rock. My parents have been divorced for like 15 years. She's at his bedside. She's with me. She's helping me run the dance studio when my dad was sick.
She's at her divorced husband's bedside.
Yes.
And they run this operation together.
We run the studio together, yeah.
As a divorced couple.
Yeah. Yeah, my parents are awesome in that sense. And even to this day, my dad, my mom, my sister, and I, usually once a month, we all get together and have a family dinner. It's pretty cool. It's pretty badass. That's maybe a Mormon thing that we've actually kept intact, so to speak. We have our monthly family home evening. But, she's been amazing in this whole time because she's really stepped up and realized, look, this is our family unit, whether it's fragmented or not. And we've really been embraced. We've embraced one another during this time with my dad's issues. And to talk about my inner child, to talk about to young Benji man, I think about that every day. And I think what I'm doing right now in my life, and this is kind of a new thing for me, John, is I'm living that. So if there's anything that I could tell him, it's not. Except, instead of giving my past self advice, I'm going to say this. I would love everybody that's listening, that might be struggling, that might be unhappy, just to know that if you could go back and tell yourself that you're living the life that you've always wanted, that you're loving, you feel love, you're being loved, you're honest, you can wake up, and even if you've had a bad day, overall it's still a great place to be. You're fulfilling your dreams beyond what you ever expected as a child. To say that, I think, is the most amazing thing, is the most ultimate and wonderful goal. And I hope that everybody's watching this, that they could get a sense of, if there's something in your personal life that isn't getting you there, if you would have to lie to your past self about your great life, then maybe you need to make some changes. I'm loved, I'm loving, I'm healthy, I'm caring for others, I'm being cared for, I'm successful, I'm working hard, I want more, I want to give back more. And I think if my younger self could hear those words from me, I think he would be happy, he would be content. And yeah, life throws you curveballs. Like, who knew I was going to be a homo, right? Who knew I would be this, that, and the other? But on the flip side, I work hard, and I know that I'm working as hard as I ever can. And to tell my past self that, I think, is a great thing. So if anybody's listening, maybe the advice that I would just give is, if you could go back and have a conversation and actually just catch up with your inner child and let them know what you're doing, as opposed to giving them advice, I think that would be the ultimate space to be in. And to be honest with you, John, I don't think even 6 months ago I would be able to say that authentically. I would probably just give advice to change and fix. And I'm not saying that I've arrived anywhere. I just feel like I'm on the right path. I've broken free from a lot of things, and I feel like I'm living as authentic as I can be. And I'm sure that there's going to be some other roadblocks coming up, and I'm going to have to deal with a lot in the coming year. But retirement or not, spirituality or not, all these things, just I want to be able to just continue to build happiness. Not to be happy, you don't have to arrive to it, but just to build toward happiness constantly. And I think that that's a realistic thing for anybody in this world.
And if somebody says, yeah, Benji, but you're a world famous dancer, champion, I'm living this normal, even mundane, tedious
9 to 5
life. Mm-hmm. Your wisdom doesn't apply to me because I'm not a movie TV star.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to say. If anybody knows me, they realize that my career, like, I am tortured every day about being better, about sacrificing more, about just living in your passion. But outside of that, my happiness has very little to do with what I do for a job. I mean, I love to perform, I love to practice, I love to train. But notice what I just said earlier on. The things that I was really happy about was that I am loved, and I'm able to feel love and give love. I'm not referring to fans. I'm not referring to how many Instagram followers I have. I'm not referring to what famous person I just worked with or choreographed for. What I'm referring to is a partner. I'm referring to my best friends, Elizabeth and Jessica and Josh and Ricky, like people, names, my dad, my mom, my sister, my cousin, the loves of my life. Those things, that's what I'm talking about. I don't care about the hoopla and the titles and this, that, and the other. Like, as a competitor, yeah, great. But I was talking about happiness, intimacy, personal stuff. People talk about So You Think You Can Dance as if I hold that as like a big thing. It was a great moment, great experience, blah, 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 blah. But I want to be loved by a person, not by masses. That's great. fantastic, but it doesn't stroke my ego so that I can go to bed at night feeling good about myself. So I think if that helps a little bit, not to say woe is me, because I have a great life. I'm grateful for what I have. But I'm talking about that more on an interpersonal level and an internal level, and that has nothing to do with that. How many Amy Winehouses, how many Jimi Hendrixes do we have to have in the world to realize you have everything, parenthetically everything, and yet you're unhappy on the inside? My level of success, my level of exposure has nothing to do with my happiness. Nothing. And I can testify to that because of the people of Oaxaca. Most of them have absolutely nothing, and yet they're the happiest people I know, the most loving people that I know. And so it has nothing to do with this spectrum of fame and celebrity. Screw that. It's stupid. Everybody poops. We're human beings, for crying out loud. So whether you relate to that or not, buddy, hope you do. Yeah.
All right. Well, Benji, is there anything else I didn't ask you that you wanted to say, or do you feel like you said everything you want to say?
I think I've said so much. I'm surprised you even allowed me to do a second one, John. I keep telling me, Benji, I listened to all 4.5 hours of your first one. Well, you're going to do it again, people. So thank you. I'm sorry. You're welcome. I wanted to thank you, though, John. I'm so proud of you as a person. I know we don't keep in touch all the time, but I also know that you help so many people, and people probably ask a lot of you constantly, and I'm sure that can be a very heavy thing to deal with. And so I admire you from afar. I support you. I support the people that support you. I'm one of them. And I hope, and here's to another 1,000, man. Here's to another 1,000, and keep changing the world, because you really are making our lives a better place. I would hope that a lot of us would arrive to these conclusions often, but I don't think we would do it with as much of a landing space, a safe landing, as we would without you. So thank you. I love you. Thank you.
Love you too, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Benji.
Air hug.
I'll be right there. Everyone who's stuck with us, thank you so much for joining us today. Benji Schwimmer, everybody, episodes 1000, 1001, 1002, probably 1003 of Mormon Stories Podcast just happened. Thanks to everyone who joined us on Facebook Live. Huge shout out and thanks to Bill Moore, to Lynn Moore, to the Moore family that sponsored this episode financially, and also with his blood, sweat, and tears here editing on the side. Thank you to everyone who donates to and supports Mormon Stories Podcast. Thanks to Cody Layton, who says that he's blushed more than once in this interview.
oh snap! Is Cody? Is he family? Is he?
No,
family?
Cody's he's a I don't want to out him, but
okay.
He does the editing, audio, video.
Oh, right on
for me.
Right on.
He's got his own story.
It's all about butt sex, Cody. It's all about butt sex.
But thanks to Cody Layton, thanks to the OSF board, Craig Woodfield, Nadine McCombs Hansen, Kim Sandberg Turner, Steve Holbrook, and Jeremy McDonald. Thanks to all of them for making this possible. Thanks to you for tuning in. Please share this. Please share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, groups. Please share this episode and others. That makes a huge difference. Like the Mormon Stories Podcast page on Facebook. Give us a positive review. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That makes a big difference. And mostly just keep sending us your emails, mormonstories@gmail.com. Comment on the blog posts. Just thank you for all your support over the years. You guys have all made this possible through your encouragement, through your donations, through your support, through your love. So thank you. It's been an amazing gift to bring to you 1,000 hours plus of interviews, and I think we're just getting going. We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
We're really proud to have our Mormon Stories billboard that's flying proudly at I-15 around, 3300 South, facing southward. Thanks to everyone who donated to make that billboard possible. It's going to be running all the way through Christmas and New Year's. But we're going to keep flying the Mormon Stories flag for as long as you guys will support us. So thanks for your support. Keep it up. We love you. We want to do more cool things in the months and years ahead. We want to keep interviewing bishops who have lost their faith. We want to keep interviewing survivors where the sexual abusers were protected and the victims were covered up. We want to do more interviews with former people that we've interviewed on Mormon Stories in years past. We want to bring them back. We want to do more mixed faith marriage stuff. We want to do more cool and creative interviews. We want to interview people of other religious traditions and their faith crises and what's happened. There's so much that we can and will do in the years ahead. Benji's doing a selfie, so I'm going to wave as Benji does the selfie. Is this a video?
It's a video. Yeah.
All right. You post that. Thanks, Benji. You were awesome. Anyway, thanks to everyone for tuning in. Tune in again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. We love you. We're signing off, and we'll see you again soon, everybody. We'll see you for 1,000, maybe even 1,500 more. All right, everybody. Take care. Thanks again. Take care, everybody.